Hi guys, welcome back to the bait building workshop. Today's going to be something completely different. We are actually going to show you how you can go from a very rough print from the Lipless Crankbait STL to the finished lure blank that you can airbrush with through my tutorials and things like that, because I have been getting a lot of questions if one can get my STL somewhere or if one can buy my baits. I decided to actually set up a Etsy store so you can actually purchase my lure STL for this lipless crankbait, and you support the channel through that and what I'm actually doing. Um, we will be going through from the design, what I'm printing, and then going through the steps that once you've got the print. As you see, I've got a lot of humidity at home at the moment, so the print isn't even that clean because I don't have a filament drying system yet. So there's a lot of bubbles, and we will still create a lure blank from this, so you don't have to be too worried if the print doesn't work as planned. And we'll be going to something like this. You can drop in some rattle balls and all kind of things, so you can do your own variation on it. And I know it's a little bit different that I'm posting twice a week because I just wanted to push this in before doing the really cool video for Saturday. I actually restored one of the old lures of mine. I'm really happy. It was a little bit of a fail, but you'll anyway see it on Saturday. And I'll straight away go ahead and take you guys to the desk at home, and I'll go through my printing settings, what I do that you can actually get to the rough print itself, and then we'll meet back in the workshop and I'll show you guys how to take your rough print and create the lure blank that we will be working with. So see you soon at home. Welcome back. As I said in the intro, we will be going from the print to the finished lure blank, and the first thing we're going to be doing is I'm going to add our Lipless Crankbait STL into the printing software. It is the slicing software from Bamboo Lab, because as you see I am using a Bamboo Lab A1 Mini. And the first thing is, once you download the file, you have got this STL that you can work with. So I tend to always rotate my baits to around, I would say, 300 degrees roughly. It doesn't matter too much. Once you've actually rotated your bait that it stands upright, you get a lot cleaner printing surface because you have only got the main structure here, and otherwise you only are working with support, but we'll go into that as soon as I prepared all the settings. We will now go ahead and set to rectilinear in all settings because I get the cleanest print results. We will be working with 75% infill density and 75% infill wall overlap, and we will keep the wall loops to 6. It is quite high because you will see there are mainly wall laps in this lure through the big air pocket, but I've got these settings for nearly all my baits and I print them all at these settings because they work best for me. I do the bottom shell layer on this bait and top shell layer with 3 layers because we don't screw in to the backtail directly, and I already set some air pockets with reinforced material for the screws in the STL, so you shouldn't be having too many problems with that. The next thing I like to do is enable the support. We will be doing tree support, and I like to go up to 50 degrees for this bait because I don't mind losing a little bit of material for extra support while printing, because otherwise you have got the main support. I'll show you guys. by 30 degrees. Once you slice the plate, you will only have support in the bottom region where you see it right now. But if you go to the support around 50 degrees and slice your plate, you will get a little bit more support. You can even go ahead and go to 60 because we would like it to go up to the tail and support it right up there as well, because you will minimize the wobbling if you are printing with something like a A1 Mini. If you've got an enclosure and you don't have the drive system that the A1 Mini uses, you won't be having as many problems with wobbling in the height, so you won't get lines and any other defects. So that is one thing to keep in mind. You can, if you want to, use a outer brim as well. And with the support, something I forgot to mention, you will only want to place the support on the build plate, because otherwise, if I'll leave it for now, I'll now show you what I mean. If you don't get the support out, you will actually have a support region inside of your bait, which you don't want. So if we say support only on the build plate itself, we can go ahead and see that the air pocket itself will be free, and that is something that we want. As soon as we are at this stage, we can go ahead and say print our plate. I will switch on my printer quickly and then I will print this. It takes 1 hour and 10 minutes the model itself, 1 hour and 20 minutes total time, and it will be using around 7.73 grams of material, and I pay around 10 euros per kilogram PETG. So that means we are around at a price, I'll quickly look, 7.8 grams we'll put in. We are around 7 to 8 cents per lure you print with the support structure and anything else, which is really cool. I know that there's still a lot of other things that go into it as well, but the print itself isn't the most expensive thing. So, welcome back. We've got our rough 3D print from the printer. As you can see on the surface, this is through the filament actually drawing water. Once it goes through the nozzle, we get a rough surface because the moisture actually evaporates and it creates these bubbles. So we won't be worrying too much because we anyway seal the bait with super glue before doing anything else. And the first step you will be doing is we are going to add our lead. So as I said, or you can read in my Etsy shop, you will need some split shot, and I am going with the 1 gram for this bait. You can variate it as you need, and we'll just be placing this inside and taking a screwdriver, and we really push it in to make sure that it broadens a little bit inside of the print and it starts holding by itself. So we'll just go ahead. This is a bit rougher work on the 3D model, but it normally holds up quite well. So we'll try and push it down as good as possible, that we can then go over with a UV coat before adding the resin, that we can harden it, and then we'll sand it down. So I'll press this in and I'll get you guys back once I add our UV resin, and then we'll go through the sanding processes that I do and also the sealing and adding hardware, because I'll show you the spots where I reinforced the bait itself, that you can add your split rings, and then we'll see how you guys can get from this to something like that. We are back, and as you can see, I have pushed down the split shot, and we will now just go ahead and add a nice drop that really domes up as well. So I don't know if you can actually see that, and it domes over the whole surface because you're not allowed to forget that the UV resin actually shrinks while the curing process is happening. So we'll let that set down first a little bit, then we'll add a little bit more maybe, because I see now it isn't as domed as before. So we'll add a little bit, and now we see we've got a nice little dome that we can work with once we start the sanding process, and I'll put it into the UV light and get that hardened straight away, and then I'll get you guys back for the sanding. So while the bait is hardening, I'll show you guys I actually am using this UV resin. I just bought it off Amazon because I often get the question what I use for clear coating, because a lot of people have got problems with clear coating their baits. And I just wanted to show you guys I mainly work with UV resin, a lot of different types. I've tried different brands and have never had a problem. So I recommend it a lot. It is very sturdy also after the curing process. And now I'll get our bait out of the hardening station and we'll start the sanding process. Well, as most of you know, I've got a three-step system. I've got these sanding blocks that are really helpful because they've got these corners. You can get into any nick and cranny. We'll be using this rougher surface before adding the super glue, and then we'll fine up everything with a fine and a super fine sanding block to actually create this optic. So you see these baits are really smooth and they are great for painting, and I'll take you guys anyway with along the way and show you what you can do, and we'll straight away start sanding. And you see we've got a little bit of a dome here, so that isn't too much of a problem because once you go over with the sanding paper, you actually see you minimize it really well and you can smooth out the whole surface. So I will smooth out the surface and then I'll get you guys back for the split eye, no, the eyelet placement on this lure. And once we do the eyelet placement, you can actually go ahead and seal it with super glue. So I will sand this down now completely with the rough block, and then we will carry on with the next steps. So now we have done the first sanding. It actually goes quite quickly. You still see some of the bubbles, but we're not going to be too worried about it. I'm going to anyway add the super glue that seals all the surfaces, and then once smoothing it out, it really gets quite perfect for airbrushing. So now I'm just going to show you guys where to place your hooks. So I've got a torch width, and I'll try and get it to dim this a little bit because I don't know if you are here from Etsy, you know that there is a drawing in that shows the reinforced areas. So we've got one right here. See if it is able to focus. You see there is a pocket there, and that is reinforced. And then we've got another one right up here where the next hook goes in. And if you look at the tail itself, like that, right, I'll try and minimize the light going through. If you look at the back, you actually have the A pocket ending right here, and you can place the screw along this curve without having any problems with strength. So I planned that in, and that's gonna be the places where you can add your hooks. I use one of these, so we'll straight away go ahead, and as we see there's one here, so I go right in the middle. I'll turn off the light. We go right in the middle of this, and just make a little pokey poke. And you see, I don't know if it focuses enough, there's a little hole added there that you can then pre-drill. And then you see, okay, there is another surface right here that we will be adding our little eyelet screw. And then the tail is the hardest part to drill, I find personally, but I like to pretty much do one right about here, and we do another little poke like that. So now it is ready for drilling. I'll get the drill and get you guys back once I place the hole. So I'm gonna use a 1mm drill to pre-drill my holes, and through marking where we reinforced everything, I try to keep it as straight as possible and just go ahead like that. First hole, you anyway notice that once you reach a certain level, you hit the air pocket. So we will find our mark right here. Ooh, we slipped off. Doesn't matter. So we are through. And then the last one that I find trickiest, because I tend to first pre-drill at a straight angle like this, and then set the drill skew and add our hole just like that. Sometimes, like today, it also happens that you hit through the top surface, but we will just clean that off. That's why it is important to do this before adding the superglue coat, because you fix that pretty much, and that is quite handy. So then we'll get some eyelet screws and just set them right into the holes that we have pre-drilled. It can sometimes still be a little struggle through excess plastic still being in, so you'll have to play around with that a little bit, because as you see, there is still a little bit of plastic right there. I tend to always have these by my side to clean off the surfaces, and then we will be able to add them in normally. This one is giving me trouble today. That should now work. There we go. Now I was able to pull everything out, and now you can place it. I tend to take a plier and twist them in, that you don't twist the eyelet screw itself, and I always like to twist it in a direction that the eyelet screw opening is towards the back. I do that because I always think of, if I get hooked somewhere and I don't want to lose the lure, I will be hoping that the eyelet screw opens, I lose the treble, but I don't lose the lure. So with a lot of yanking and things like that, you can still get your lure back, because lures that you hand paint are more work than things you actually buy, and some of them work well and you don't want to lose them. So I tend to do that, because I rather lose a treble that rusts and actually get back the lure body, because I can replace a new treble if I screw this out again, and then we won't have to do the entire lure again. So that's something you can decide for yourself, because if the opening is to the front, you'll have a little bit more strength, and it can be that the lure or the screw actually loosens, and otherwise tendency the actual opening of the eyelet screw opens and you just lose the treble, which is quite cool. So now I'll add this last screw, and then we'll go ahead and start the super glue coat that I used before starting my airbrushing videos. So that is pretty much the lure that we're working with, and now I'll get everything ready for coating it with super glue. We now are at the step of sealing our lure with super glue, and this has to be quite quick. It also always depends on the gloves you use. These are quite thin, so you have to be careful that they don't rip off once the super glue actually is on your bait, because I'll show you how I do it. I really drench them in super glue. I tend to do it twice or one time depending on the print surface. The print surface on this bait is not too good through the high water intake of the filament, so we will be doing it twice. And as you see, we have got our grip set to our size of the eyelet screw that you can then hold it out, and we'll place this to the side, and then we'll just go ahead and really take the super glue, go along these corners like this, rub it in, go along here, also rub it in, and then do this and take the grips and take it to the side and let it dry. You really have to be careful with the gloves that you use, because as I said, these gloves are very thin and not ideal for this process. I would get neutral gloves because they tend to be a lot better, because now as you see we have got a little bit on here. I'll have to look if I've got other gloves here, because some gloves work well, some gloves don't, and that's why we anyway going to be doing it twice today, and I'll try and get that off before we do the next step. So if your glove rips off as it did by me, I actually found some other gloves as well that we'll be using. You can take a knife like this and just scrape it off, and once you have the feeling that everything is off, you can set it off to dry, because the 3D prints are quite rough. Once you do all these processes, you anyway will be sanding over everything still, and once you do that, I always try to also get the eyelet screws, and now you see there's no rest of the glove itself there. I'll put on some other gloves, then we'll do the second coat, and I'll show you guys the next following steps for getting the lure blank. So as you see, I've got different gloves on. I would really recommend to get thicker neutral gloves, and we will now do a second coat because we also scratched that off, and I'll show you how different gloves also perform. So I'll grab our lure. It is still a little bit sticky because it hasn't dried completely, but we won't mind too much, and we'll just really give it a nice second coating with rubbing it just along and really making sure that we cover the entire thing. And I would always wear eye protection and also a mask, or do it in a highly ventilated area, because the super glue fumes are very aggressive. As you see, the gloves really hold up a lot better because they don't start to glue towards the lure. So now we will rub it along the whole entire bait, and then we will grab it on one of the eyelet screws, and we will just leave it as is to dry. And once it's dry, I'll get you guys back for the next steps, and there's not a lot to do anymore before we actually have got our finish blank for airbrushing. So we'll go through the following steps, then I'll still show you the eyes that I tend to use. I got them off Amazon. And then you guys are pretty much set to do your own variation on this lure. So we are back. The dry is finished. Not completely. It's dry to the touch. Some parts are still sticky, but we won't mind. I'll now go ahead and take our first sanding block that is finer than the other one, and this is a fine and this is a super fine, and we'll just go over the bait like this, and we'll see that we clean the surface up because it is still quite rough, and once it is cleaned down I'll take you guys with and show you the next step with the superfine, and then we'll be finished and ready for the airbrush. As you can see, we are now finished with sanding it down with the fine block. It really looks rough, but they hold up quite long. Just I used this one already quite a long time, and I'll be going over with the superfine. I'm pretty sure you could already airbrush this bait and get a really clean surface, but I tend to go over shortly with the superfine just to really make sure that the surface is completely clean, and then we will be ready for the airbrushing. I'll quickly do this, then I'll show you guys in the outro the finished prepared lure blank, and then we'll see each other for the restoration video that I did, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. So I'll quickly do this and then we'll see each other for the outro. Hi guys, so welcome back to the outro. So today's video, as you saw, was really from the 3D print to the lure blank itself. As you see, I went over with the fine sandpaper. It is a really smooth surface ready for airbrushing itself. I'm really happy with this one again, so we can maybe add a foil or something different. Go through the airbrushing tutorials. You might find something you would like to do yourself with the lure blank if you downloaded it. And I'll just show you guys before adding the clear coat or eyes and things like that. Everything adds a little bit of weight still. We have got a really cool front heavy lure that is just floating. As soon as you reel in, it goes under the surface and really works quite well. I think I made a video, I don't know on which social media platform. I'm on Reddit, YouTube and Instagram. You can maybe check it out, see how the action of this bait actually is. I'm really happy with this one, that's why it's the first one that I actually release. The two-halved bait that I also really enjoy is going to be the next one I'm going to be releasing, and I'll just show you guys. And that's the steps you're going to need from going from a blank or a rough 3D print to the blank, and then with a airbrushing tutorial you can make your own variation on different lures, use stencils. I might be also uploading stencils to my Etsy shop that you can use for creating your lure optics, and we'll just progress in that way. It's a great help towards my channel and what I'm doing, because everything I do comes out of my own pocket, unless I get sponsored through firms like Grilleri that provide a airbrush for me, but that also took time and work to get to that point that I get a little bit of a support from different firms. So if you want to support me and what I do, you can check out the STL file. I'll put everything in the description, and I wish you guys a great one, and keep tuned for Saturday's video. Saturday's video is going to be something really special. I might be doing more of that in the future because I really enjoyed it. It was the first wood lure that I actually worked on. We had to strip the paint. We did a complete new paint job. There were some fails. I'm actually still waiting for some screws to really finish the lure that we can take it out and test it. But it was one of the coolest builds since I have been doing lure building, and that's the last 10 months. So I wish you guys a great one, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll see each other for the Saturday video. So keep safe. Cheers.